Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's case is one that's infuriating because time and time again, in my opinion, individuals who stalk victims are not taken seriously. They are seen as people who are just struggling with their lives or finding it challenging to move on from a partner that's ended the relationship with them. And literally, they are not seen as the predators that they are. And we know that this means that bodies pile up. Literally, year in, year out, we hear about cases where women are murdered by their partners because people didn't take stalking seriously. And it isn't just women who die, it's men as well. And today's case is going to example how that plays out. Also, if you're new to my channel, I release my content here twice weekly and I will always do so. So if you like true crime and you like deep dives, this is a channel for you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also get your notifications on so you never miss an episode when I release them. Big shout out to those of you supporting me on YouTube membership and Patreon. I hope you're enjoying all your full length content over there. Without you, I can't make this. So I appreciate every single one of you. And with that in mind, if you do like my content, give me a like. I would appreciate that hugely. Stalking for me has been something that I've worked with in my career. I've had lots of clients deal with this, both cyber stalking, but actually also physical stalking, where people are literally rolling up outside of your door and waiting for you to leave so that they can let you know that their presence is going to be felt. And it is terrifying. Now, with respect, not all stalking situations end up in somebody losing their life, but it happens time and time again. I have covered many on this channel, and yet still, even in this modern time, people struggle to take it seriously. The authorities struggle to take it seriously, and because of that, more people will die. This story is about Jesse Alvarez, an individual that to all intents and purposes from the outside looking in wasn't somebody that you would typically believe had this malevolent personality. But like I said, the thing about human beings is we all wear masks. We present in certain ways, in certain situations. And for the most part, as long as we're good human beings, that isn't really a problem. But if you have a malevolence within, there are certain things that can activate it. Humiliation, betrayal, a feeling that you've lost something territorially that you believe you own. These are all activators. And this case examples those activators perfectly. So he absolutely develops this incredibly unhealthy obsession with his ex-girlfriend. And of course, he doesn't want to let her go, in spite of the fact that she clearly wants to be let go of. And actually, she doesn't belong to anyone. This is the psychological makeup of stalkers, because they believe that they want something and should be able to have it, even if the individual that they wish to have chooses an altogether different path. Really simple situation when Amy broke off her relationship and found happiness elsewhere literally became a catalyst for murder. And this case is going to talk about how tragic it is that still in this modern day and age, we have people out there with obsessive thinking who are willing to go through the most catastrophic of consequences because they simply cannot accept rejection or the natural progression of life and love. This is all about somebody who gets so consumed by jealousy that they are literally willing to resort to murder. And the truth is, these individuals are not one-offs. They exist in every society. And until we know how to manage these individuals more effectively, I'm going to tell this story over and over and over again. The only difference will be the name of the victim. So let's go back to June 2015. Jesse Alvarez and Amy, they meet on a dating app. They begin a relationship like so many people do these days. And we all know the thing about a dating app is you're going to put your very best foot forward. No one goes on a dating app and writes a profile that is truthful. We're all so interesting. We're all so funny. We're all so kind because we want to attract a date and a mate. We're not going to talk about the things that are less positive about who we are. Now, on the 1st of September 2019, this is actually after a few years of dating, Amy's had enough. She just doesn't feel connected to Alvarez in the way that she wanted to be, so she ends the relationship with him. She said that the reason that she actually broke up with him was because she felt that she had been with him for a period of time and it was very clear that it was not a safe or healthy relationship. She said, I didn't want to be in it anymore. And she'd been in it for a good while. And I think it does take quite a lot of time for us to start to accept that the person that we are with, who we've seen in the very best of lights, also has the darkness about them, and that eventually we have to choose to be free from them just to live a life of meaning and possibility because we're being held back by the experience of being with them. Now, he said to her that ending the relationship was going to, quote, make her life very difficult, which is a really bizarre comment to make because I don't know about you guys, but I've been in situations where relationships end. And it's not very pleasant. It's not pleasant when you're the one ending it. It's certainly not pleasant when you're the one being dumped. But for the most part, what you say at the end is, oh, that's really upsetting, or I understand. You might have a conversation that's grown up. You might just go off and cry. But it's very rare to be threatening. It's not kind of the thing that you want to be doing at the end of a relationship. You know, it's shake hands, say goodbye. But to actually say, well, your life is going to be very difficult now, that is just sinister. And of course, that's not a typical reaction, but actually it's indicative of exactly what he is trying to say to her psychologically, emotionally, etc. Because he is saying to her, I'm going to make your life really tough. Now, a few days after the breakup, Alvarez actually asks to meet Amy. But Amy says no, and I'm completely with her on this point. It is one of those things that is not helpful or healthy. Just a tip here, guys. If you break up with somebody and they get in contact with you and are like, just can we talk about it? I just need to sit down and listen to what you've got to say, and I've just got to say some things to you. It can be really tempting to say to yourself, I'm just going to give them this because they've had meaning to me and they just need it. They want some extra closure. Don't. You've ripped off the elastoplast. Just let the separation have distance and time so that that person can heal and that you can carry on moving on. There is nothing good about sitting down for another conversation about a relationship that you absolutely know is dead in the water, because the only reason the ex wants to communicate with you in that way is because they want to connect again, and it's just going to make the journey harder. Now, on the September the 6th, Alvarez actually prevents Amy from leaving her apartment. So physically, he's not letting her leave the apartment that she lives in, which is horrendous. Now, after that incident, she goes ahead and sets up CCTV cameras, and she even has her locks changed. And you can understand that this is a woman who understands personally that there is a problem with his mindset and psyche, and she is expecting an escalation in potential behaviours, and she is 100% on the money. Literally a few days after that incident where she's not allowed to leave her apartment, she's notified by the cameras that Alvarez is outside and he's trying the handle of her apartment, literally trying to get inside. So he knows no boundaries. And the thing is, this is something that people need to take so seriously because that is such an overstep. We understand that people hurt when relationships break down. We understand that people try to make some kind of connection with their partners that they used to be with to deal with their own psychological sadness. We get it. But when you are actually physically going to somebody's apartment, not letting them leave, trying to get inside their apartment without their permission, we are in a whole different category. This is a deeply unhealthy category where somebody is willing to push any boundaries to achieve whatever it is that they've decided that they want. And to give you an example of how far his obsession is going with Amy, in one instance, he actually turns up whilst Amy's at Disneyland with a family member. So, you know, just going to throw it out there. I do know that Disneyland is a very, very popular place. I have been to Disneyland myself. Rather expensive, not going to lie. Also, quite a lot of queues, but the children think it's magic, so you put up with it. But nonetheless, I know that some of you will probably sat with your Mickey Mouse ears going, I can't believe that you're not just being positive entirely about Disneyland. I'm just saying, it's very hot and it's very busy and it's very beautiful and there are quite a lot of queues. But if you were there and your ex, who you've had a fractious relationship at the end with, is suddenly near you, they're not with a friend, they're not with a child, they're just having a wander around Disneyland, it's a direct message to you, isn't it? And that message is, know where you go, are you safe? I know where you are. That's what happens to stalking victims. They never feel safe. They always know that that predator is just a breath away, their eyes in the distance watching every move that they make. Now, understandably, since the moment that he had tried to get into her apartment, she actually hadn't felt safe at all. She knew that he didn't have boundaries. She's waiting for the next occasion. So she actually decides she's going to move. And that's so unfair. Stalking victims should never have to leave the life that they know for their own safety, but time and time again, that's what they do, because it is terrifying to imagine that an individual is always present in their location. Now, despite the fact that she doesn't go ahead and tell anybody that she's moving, because understandably, she's not stupid, she's a very bright woman, she recognizes that if she gives any information out about her move, he's going to pick up on it. So he doesn't know the new address, he's not even meant to know that she's left the area, but Alvarez actually immediately starts to send letters to a new home. Why? Because he's letting her know, nothing you can do can stop me finding out where you are. The psychological torment that literally creates for victims is just enormous. The burden that victims feel, because literally they always believe that this predator is one step ahead of them, is truly devastating and absolutely unsettling beyond measure. You just constantly are looking over your shoulder. It's as simple as that. Now we get to December 2019 and Amy goes ahead and files for a restraining order. Bear in mind, Alvarez's obsession at this point has become far too much for her to handle, and also she's starting to acknowledge this is bordering on something that is certainly criminal as far as she is concerned. Her privacy has been invaded, she doesn't feel safe in her own environment, he's refusing to acknowledge the end of the relationship. So this needs some action. And she says in the application that during their relationship together, he'd engaged in a pattern of control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. She also added that after they'd broken up, his actions had become erratic and had also escalated over time. Now, at this point, a temporary restraining order was provided because they needed to plan the hearing that's going to take place to listen to these complaints. Now, in January 2020, her request for the permanent restraining order is refused. It's refused. It's determined that Amy had not met the burden of proof that abuse had occurred within the meaning of the Domestic Violence Protection Act. Now, I get it. There has to be absolute boundaries legally, because you can't have somebody in hearsay suggesting that somebody has been very violent towards them, creating a restraining order that actually is not based in truth or evidence, particularly because we could see people using those opportunities to prevent exes seeing their children, for example. So we definitely need a burden of proof. But she has a burden of proof. She has witnesses at Disneyland when he's there. She has the CCTV that records him trying to get in. And okay, you can say, well, that doesn't give a burden of proof that he had been violent to her or coercive to her and so on and so forth. But you're saying to yourself, yes, okay, it might not show that, but actually when it comes down to the court, this is an individual against an individual, and one of those individuals is feeling highly threatened by the other, and she wants him to be removed from her environment so that he can't come close. And actually, how is that going to really impact on his life? Even if they're just bearing it in her favor, they just want to believe that maybe they need to listen to this female in this situation because at the end of the day, he's physically more dominant. There have been issues with him turning up unannounced and unwanted. Surely it would have been a better idea just to err on the side of caution, as opposed to basically letting this man know that he can go ahead and do these heinous things to her and somehow get away with it. That gives him some very powerful messaging. Now, in February 2020, Amy, in spite of all this that is happening in the background, is just trying to move on with her life. And she's actually met a guy called Mario Fierro, and they end up going on a date. He's a fellow teacher, so he understands her work and her passion. And he actually worked at Cathedral Catholic High School, which is the same school as her. He taught social studies. He was also the athletic director of Notre Dame Academy, and that was a Catholic elementary school. So he's doing well in his career, and she's smitten. It's as simple as that. They just both really connect, like each other, spend time with each other, and are really enjoying being in one another's company. And life is moving forward for her, and she's happy. Now, within a month, they're in a proper relationship. And Amy actually described that relationship as the most genuine, authentic, and loving relationship that she'd ever had in her life. So that really does demonstrate the difference between the one that she'd had before with Alvarez versus the one that she found herself in. Now, bear in mind, she hasn't been given this restraining order, and this is given a very powerful message to Alvarez, which is that, hey, is he really doing anything wrong? Does she really have a right to keep him from her life? And he is pushing forward clearly with the mindset of, if he can't have her, then why should anybody else? We get to October 2020. At this point, he has literally been repeatedly trying to gain employment at the school where Amy worked. I mean, this is full on stalker behavior of the highest level. What kind of an individual cannot accept that the relationship is over and wants to forcibly get back in to the life of the victim? This demonstrates such a high level disregard for the actual human being that they purport to want to be with. Because when we want to be with somebody, it's because we're meant to want to enhance their life. We're meant to raise them up. We're meant to make them feel better about who they are. We're not meant to intimidate them and scare them and make them feel that they're trapped at every point and juncture. But that's exactly what he's trying to do. Now, bizarrely, during all of these unsuccessful attempts, during this particular month, he just managed to get a job in the cafeteria. Now, fortunately, Amy's informed that he's on campus and he was forcibly removed. And the person who informed Amy that he was there had reportedly recognised Alvarez from a security poster that had been posted on the campus. So clearly, the school were really concerned for Amy and felt that they needed to engage in a supportive strategy to protect her. And indeed, they did, for the most part, do that. But then, on February the 1st, 2021, so just a few months after that incident, Alvarez is having none of it. He's not accepting that this relationship has ended. He's not accepting that she is now happy and content in a loving, stable relationship with a genuine human being that she really, really cares for. So he drives to the home where she's now living with her new fiance because they've got engaged. He actually arrives shortly after 6 a.m. in the morning, so really early. He waits for almost an hour. At this point, an unsuspecting Mario leaves the house because he's going to go to work. He starts that journey around 7 a.m. And at that point, just as he's going to get to his car, just as he's going to drive to his job like he should be entitled to do every single day of the week, Alvarez begins shooting at Mario. And he doesn't stop. He hits him 6 times. And 4 of those shots, they occur at close range. 2 of them hit him in the front of the head, 2 in the back of his head. And understandably, with those kind of injuries, you're not going to survive, and he was killed at the scene. The very fact that this stalker is now a murderer demonstrates exactly why stalking behaviour needs to be taken absolutely serious, because this happens time and time again. Now, understandably, Alvarez is arrested soon after the shooting. In fact, it's the same day, and the police at this point exercise a warrant on his house and he's automatically taken into custody. He is banged to rights. It's as simple as that. But of course, Alvarez isn't going to go down that road. He's not going to be hands up. I know what I've done is a terrible thing. He's not going to be accepting that he's just ruined this man's life by taking it, and also his fiance's life by taking him from her. He's not concerned about that. Now he's done what he wanted. He's destroyed the relationship that he's so angry exists. The betrayal that he believes misguidedly that has happened to him. So he has a right to destroy those who he believes have hurt him. None of that concerns him. All that concerns him is that now somehow he's going to get away with murder. Now, the trial takes place in 2022, and again, because we are dealing with a man like Alvarez, who is clearly very egocentric, he's only concerned about his own needs. He really doesn't care about the impact of his actions. He doesn't care about the consequences for the family who've been affected by this. All he cares about is saving his own skin, so he goes ahead and pleads not guilty to murder, as well as to a special circumstance allegation of lying in wait, and the reason he does that is he wants to walk free. Simple as that. He doesn't believe that anybody should incarcerate him for going ahead and murdering this innocent man, because at the end of the day, they betrayed him. They deserved what they got. And also, it speaks of an individual who could not care less about putting the family, who have already lost a man of such meaning, through the trial. It means that they're going to psychologically have to manage the horror that plays out in those circumstances when listening to the evidence, which will be absolutely devastating for them. Now, the prosecution absolutely go down the route that this was absolutely 100% clearly premeditated, that Alvarez has killed Mario, and the reason he's killed Mario is he's found out he's now engaged to his ex-girlfriend and he cannot bear it. He believes that nobody has a right to have her, and so removing him from the situation means that he's cleared the way for a potential reconnection with her, which again is so unbelievably delusional, but speaks to the egocentricity and self-interest of this man. Now, he actually takes a stand, and when Alvarez takes a stand, he basically says, listen, I've got undiagnosed autism. I kid you not, guys. undiagnosed autism, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And this is what basically the defence argued contributes to his obsession with Amy. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I do know quite a lot of people who are autistic. I also have worked with a ton of people who have obsessive compulsive disorder. And you know, with an obsessive compulsive disorder, what happens sometimes is people get really intrusive thoughts, and they are horrible and they are really disturbing for the person who's got the obsessive compulsive disorder thoughts, because it says in their mind horrible things that they are going to do or they think they're going to do. But what defines them as good people is they have these horrible thoughts and they blame themselves for them, and they feel terrible about having them because they've got such a high level of conscience. They know they would never actually go and do the things that they are thinking. That's what makes it an intrusive thought. You don't get thoughts with obsessive compulsive disorder and then go and harm people, because that wouldn't be the disorder. That would be your actual personality type. And also, autistic people don't go off shooting people because somebody's dumped them in a relationship. How disrespectful to people who actually are autistic. How disrespectful to people with OCD. But of course, how often do we see this in court? They'll throw these things in as if to mitigate the actions of a murderer. Now, what he said was, in his own world, he couldn't shake the desire to be with her, to talk to her and help her, and had become kind of obsessed, I guess. That's what he said. I'd become kind of obsessed, I guess. Can we just unpick that a little bit? So he said, what did you say? Well, I said that I can't shake wanting to be with her, wanting to talk to her, and wanting to help her. How did you help her? By always being in the vicinity if anything was required. How did you actually help her though? Just existing in this world, knowing I wish to help her. Did you actually shoot her fiance? He may have in the end been let down, so I have chosen to help her now, as opposed to in the future, should things go wrong in their relationship. Sorry, I'm just gonna get out this cattle prod and just gonna use it in court. I know that I can't use a cattle prod in court. I know that's not appropriate, but nonetheless, in my head, that did help me with that ludicrous response that was just given. Can you hear how these predators actually do the mental gymnastics to actually believe in their own minds that they are justified in their actions? So he was saying, I was just trying to be alive. I couldn't take the hint. I couldn't take the hint. I couldn't take the hint. I mean, you know what? There are some people in life who are a little bit overbearing. You know, your auntie who comes round at Christmas, drinks all your eggnog, falls asleep in the corner. You've told them ideally you want everyone out for 10 o'clock at night, because even though that's a little bit late for the kids, you know, you've got some relaxed boundaries, it's Christmas. She's still there 3 o'clock in the morning. You wake up in the morning, turns out she's been and ate all the leftovers. We have people who can't take the hint to leave. It's happened in my own life where, believe me, one person didn't leave for 5 days. We know some people struggle, but you can't take the hint when she's got engaged to somebody else. Methinks you are lying. It's as simple as that. But again, he's just a victim, isn't he, guys? I just couldn't take the hint. Now, that hint is obviously that she didn't want to be with him. Her actions have shown that she doesn't want to be with him. Her getting involved in a new relationship shows she doesn't want to be with him. Him being escorted off campus because he was seen as a threat to her means she doesn't want to be with him. The court restraining order that they didn't grant nonetheless, but was still an evidence of her not wanting to be with him. How many more hints do you need? Do you need somebody literally walking in front of you with some kind of sign on them saying she doesn't want to be with you? But apparently all of that stuff just didn't resonate. He just couldn't connect. At the end of the day, he didn't care. He didn't care that her answer was no. It wasn't about her. It was never about her. It's about him. It's what he wants. It's about what he needs. And how dare anyone believe that they have a right to abandon him, because he's so amazing, because he knows how the world should be. He knows how it should operate, and he wants to put everything back in place until he gets what he wants, in spite of the fact that clearly the person that he wants in this fantasy is completely unaware of those intentions and completely unwanting of those attentions. This is classic behaviour in a stalking case. the stalker does not care at all about what the person they're stalking wants and whether or not their advances are wanted or not. They only care about what they want. They pursue the person absolutely 100% regardless of their feelings. It's more a case of not taking no for an answer than not being able to understand or not being able to take the hint. It's simply that they understand all of that and it's still something they're going to pursue because you're irrelevant as the victim. It's all about their needs. He will have been absolutely infuriated when he saw Mario and Amy's engagement post online because it had been posted on Facebook. This is actually posted by the school that they worked, and he was apparently super shocked by the news and immediately felt this sense of betrayal by Amy, even though Amy had honestly and openly ended the relationship with him and said there was no going back. How can you feel betrayed by somebody who's moved on? Actually, it's quite the contrary. They didn't betray you. They were open, they were honest, they were transparent. They said they didn't want to be with you. You were no longer in a relationship with the person, therefore they cannot betray you. The mindset of this man is that if he feels he owns something or wants something, then whether they, of their own volition, choose a different path, it's irrelevant. And to add insult to injury, Alvarez says, listen, I thought that Mario was taking advantage of Amy's vulnerabilities. He said that Amy had apparently had issues with drinking in the past, and he'd actually seen a post on social media where she and a new fiancé were holding an alcoholic drink. And Alvarez said that he thought he could speak to Mario, and that would mean that he could inform him of the fact that this isn't appropriate. Amy needs some support around not drinking, and also he felt that this could help him move on from his fixation with Amy. Now, where to begin with that? I don't know about you, but when you have a relationship and it ends, first of all, don't stalk them on social media because they're not in your life anymore. You don't need to see it. In fact, it's just adding salt to the wounds. Secondly, if there are pictures of your ex having a good time with a new partner, maybe involving alcohol, and you think, well, my partner had a bit of a problem with alcohol when they were with me, maybe, just throwing it out there, it's because they were with you. Maybe, Alvarez, she needed a couple of glasses of wine just to cope with your company. Maybe that could be it. And even if she was going down a route that you weren't happy with, not your business. But of course, what's he trying to do here, guys? We all know I'm the hero of the story. I just really care for her so deeply. I just want her to have the best for her life. And I don't want people taking advantage of her. And I don't want this man taking her down a road where alcohol is concerned. Maybe she hasn't confided in him about the alcohol. Maybe I need to be the hero in this story and tell him so that I can protect her and he can protect her too because I'm such a good human being. Can you believe that this is somebody's actual capacity to make BS up to present in court and believe somewhere along the line that the jury are going to be like, oh, that makes perfect sense. If I'm not looking up exes and thinking, where are they in their life? What do they need to do? They probably need to be with a different person, stop carrying out those habits that I don't think are good. And I often intervene. I do interventions every 3 months. Yeah, with exes all the time, yeah. Got my whole company. Yeah, 3monthexintervention.com. It's amazing. I mean, literally, it drives me bonkers. And again, he's trying to make Mario the problem in this relationship now, because if he can deflect blame, that will, first of all, make him feel entitled. And secondly, as far as he is deluded, convince the jury that actually he has a point in this situation. Now, he said when Mario saw him and when he actually said, listen, I'm Alvarez, I'm the ex, apparently Mario had snapped. And then Mario from nowhere just starts hitting him. You know, at the end of the day, there Alvarez is. Hello, Mario. Just here to introduce myself. I'm Alvarez. I'm Amy's ex. And then suddenly he's just getting pummeled with hits. Would never happen. Also, just put yourself in Mario's perspective. Let's just say Alvarez gets out of the car and Mario sees him. Mario's going to know who Alvarez is. He's going to know how disturbed he is. He's going to know potentially that he's a dangerous individual to be around. He's going to know how he's treated Amy, and it's going to disturb Mario that that's the case. And he will feel, no doubt, threatened. That all goes without saying. So Mario wouldn't have a positive reaction to him, but there's no way on God's planet that he'd rush at him and try to punch him. Alvarez says, well, you know what, I was completely taken aback by this action, couldn't believe that this Mario guy's coming for me. And then magically, Alvarez pulls out his gun. In self-defense, of course, bear that in mind. He just happens to have his gun on him, because that's what I always have. If you're not taking your gun to go and have a chat, what are you doing to protect yourself? I mean, you're in the office, your colleague comes over, they want a bit of a talk about some work you're doing, and you're like, probably, I need to just make sure that I'm actually wearing my holster and gun, because you never know where this conversation might escalate. How ludicrous. So Alvarez says he pulls his gun out in self-defense, begs Mario to stop, but of course Mario doesn't, even though Mario is a teacher of great standing, loved by everyone around him, not violent at all, cares deeply about young people. But suddenly we're expected to see that Mario, when he sees a man who he knows has got a dark predisposition, who he knows is malevolent through and through, as soon as he sees him with a gun, meaning that Mario can be killed, as opposed to Mario thinking, well, I think I'll just retreat from this situation because obviously it's highly dangerous. I'm going to call the police because I've done nothing wrong. No, Mario just thinks, I can take on a gun, and carries on attacking Alvarez. Absolutely ludicrous. But again, this is a story that's being weaved in court. On the stand, he actually said Mario got his fingers around the trigger and pulled it, and the gun discharged. And I screamed because I was so afraid. So now, of course, Alvarez is afraid. He's not the person who's the perpetrator now, he's the victim. And it's clear to everybody with one brain cell, and I'm not suggesting that the jury only had one brain cell, I'm just suggesting that that is all that is required to explore this version of events and throw it out. It's clear that he's done it to claim the murder was in self-defense, to stand his ground, essentially. And I find it really frustrating because it's one thing to actually say that Mario had been killed accidentally in a struggle over a gun. That would also, by the way, be a complete lie because of the number of times that he was shot. And it also doesn't explain why Alvarez is literally outside their house with a gun in the first place. But the idea that you want to, in court, claim that Mario came and not only came over, but pulled the trigger on himself, just riddled me this. He was shot 6 times. 6 times. Bear that in mind. And so at the end of the day, why would he continue to shoot himself? Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And also, just to throw in, the only injury on Alvarez was a minor abrasion. And the homicide detective actually said that they would class that minor abrasion as the type of injury his young daughter would refer to as a boo-boo. So we know who the perpetrator is and we know who the victim is. It goes without saying, because one of them has literally got a body full of bullets and one has a minor little scratch. And interestingly, it was also commented that there were actually 6 seconds which passed between the first and second gunshot. So again, that completely throws out Alvarez's description of what's happened. Now, what I would say is there were a lot of objections on that point that were repeatedly raised in court. So there wasn't actually any further discussion on that point. But that means that there was clearly a period of time where Alvarez could have stopped shooting. He could have reconsidered and thought, oh, you know what, 1 bullet's enough. So the very fact that there was that short gap and then more bullets shot shows that he intended to kill the man that he was shooting. And the fact that those numerous gunshots didn't occur in quick succession is absolutely telling of the regards to his motives. He wanted Mario dead, and he made sure that that happened. Now, Deputy District Attorney Ramona McCarthy, they said that every bit of evidence proves that the defendant went to their home to murder Mario. So Alvarez had actually made, what can we say, a number of incriminating searches online. And we know this, don't we? We know that people don't think about the consequences of their actions after going ahead and doing the thing that they've been completely fixated on. So he's obsessed with the idea of removing Mario from the picture. He's obsessed with getting Amy back, but he's not thought to himself, well, after I've done that, what will happen? You know, he's so content and intent on wanting to actually make the world shift and change in the way that he's decided he wants the world to shift and change, that he hasn't thought about how different other people will feel about that. And when he's killed Mario, other people won't want the world to have shifted and changed like he wanted. And they're going to be curious and inquisitive as to what the hell played out for Mario to end up dead. And when they digitally analyze all of your technology and they find these searches that are highly, highly, highly suspicious, such as how to shoot someone in self-defense, well, I'm going to throw it out there just so that we're all aware. You don't Google how to shoot someone in self-defense, because that would suggest you were premeditating, wanting to get into an altercation with somebody to look like you were defending yourself, when in fact it was a whole different story. So that in itself is absolutely incriminating. Also, in California, can you shoot someone trying to rob you? How to hire a hitman, I kid you not. How police can track you through your phone. Obviously didn't get the answer on that one, being in mind that we are actually looking at the searches that he made on these devices. So clearly Google didn't give him the appropriate response. Also, how to delete Google search history. Well, you can, but only so that your mates can't see what you're looking at. The police can get all of this with forensic analysts. It's as simple as that. And also, what does a woman do with an engagement ring if a man dies? I'm going to tell you, she keeps it, just for any future reference, because she loved the man who died, who gave it her. Also, how to commit the perfect murder. Again, obviously didn't get the appropriate responses off Google for that. Not that there should be, by the way. Also, how to shoot someone with a 9mm Glock. Genuinely, who searches that and then actually goes ahead and kills somebody? I mean, that's all I'd need to hear as a jury member to feel that there was no reasonable doubt that this individual was 100% guilty. And then also, and to some degree most tellingly, if the other searches were not blatant enough, he literally searched how to kill your ex's fiancé. And actually those searches had begun just 5 hours after the photo that announced Amy and Mario's engagement. So that went out, and immediately he's so angry, he's so consumed that he wants to figure out, how do I end this situation? How do I get Amy back, or at least prevent her from moving on with the happiness that she absolutely deserved? He just wanted to destroy that. Of course, when he's asked about this in court, he says, no. You know, I searched those things. I searched them, but I didn't search them intending to hurt Mario. I actually found them therapeutic. Sorry, where are you right now? Well, I'm in court. Yes, why? Well, because unfortunately somebody died. Who died? Well, he was called Mario and he sadly died. He sadly got involved in kind of shooting himself and he's dead. And isn't that the person you started therapeutically searching things online about to potentially end their life with? Yes, but I mean, that was literally purely to do with just therapeutic experience. I mean, the fact that he's now dead, and the fact that I'm in court accused of his murder, and the fact that those actual messages suggest that I'm directly responsible, aside from that, I'm completely innocent. Do you know what's really sad? Mario's family would have had to listen to that. Amy would have had to listen to that. The idea that he's actually premeditating and planning the demise of this lovely human being, and Mario was a genuinely wonderful human being. It's just so telling and indicative of the malevolent nature that this human being carries. Now, one of the things that he did admit was that he said he had bad fantasies of wishing that Mario was gone or dead or not here anymore. So he does admit that he doesn't want him here anymore, that he wants him dead, but that he's not actually responsible of being the reason why he's dead. Now, Alvarez owned 2 guns. He'd also been taking shooting lessons. In fact, he started taking those shooting lessons, guess when? After hearing about Amy's engagement. Also, whilst he was at the shooting range, he actually asked the instructor really troubling questions. So he asked the instructor, where's the best place to shoot someone to kill them? What about the back of the head? Honestly, it's almost comedic if you take it out of the context of the horror and trauma I'm talking about, because can you imagine being at the shooting range and you've got this guy who comes across a little bit strange, because this guy's quite egotistical, he's quite aloof, and there's just something about his nature that comes across as a little bit strange. And the next thing is saying, you know, just advise me of how to kill somebody most effectively. As an instructor, you're going to be thinking, I don't like this person, I'm worried about this person. And this is not a typical question to ask, because it would not stain the conscience of the instructor who actually evidenced that he was asking those questions. Now, at this point, if I was sat on the jury, I would genuinely be going, can we just can stop the case? Now, we want to retire. We don't need to hear anything else. We want to retire. We'll be back in about 17 minutes. Get the coffee on in the room that we have to go and discuss this. We're only going to have time for one. Because it's so obvious that this murder was premeditated, it was committed in cold blood, it was about jealous rage, and it is laughable that there he is in court trying to claim self-defense, or even that Mario was the person who tried to pull the trigger and essentially meant that they died of their own volition to some degree. Now, Alvarez's mother actually came into court and testified, and she basically told the court, listen, my son was absolutely broken after his relationship with Amy had ended. She said, I tried to encourage him to move on. I actually encouraged him to move in with me. He actually did that for a short while, but then apparently he left to live with his brother. But can we just have that noted, that his mother is clearly very supportive, and his mother was trying to help him heal, and he chose not to acknowledge and accept that support. It's as certain as that, because at the end of the day, she was there providing him with the house to stay in, providing him with the sage advice that he required. And what did he do with that? Rejected it, moved in with his brother, and killed someone. We get to March 2024. None of you will be surprised that at this point Alvarez was convicted of first-degree murder, plus the special circumstances of lying in wait, because that's what he'd done. He was premeditated, he was waiting, he knew what he was going to do, and he went through with it. Now, he was supposed to be sentenced that May, but it was delayed literally multiple times for undisclosed health issues, stroke ones he was making up. Let's just be honest about that. He was just making stuff up. Now, at one point, he did test positive for COVID-19. Well, we all know how reliable those tests were. Just get a batch of them, just keep testing, and in the end, you'll get a positive one, even though the rest were negative. They were rubbish. But he gets tested for COVID-19, gets it, and then the sixth time it was delayed. Alvarez actually managed to get into court that day. But at this point, I kid you not, he flipped the wheelchair over that he was in. And why he was in a wheelchair, no one knows. And he banged his head on the floor. So at that point, he actually had to go and receive medical attention as a result. It kind of drives me a little bit crazy that these kind of predators are allowed to do that, to just hold the court into some pantomime scenario where they are completely in control. If I was the judge, I'd be like, you know what? It's okay. He looks like he's at least semi-conscious. We can just get on with it now. Could you just come and prop him up? No, don't pick the wheelchair up. Don't put it out because he can do it again. Then just, I don't know, put a shoe under his head. Just put a shoe under his head. And in fact, John from security, just put your shoe with your foot in it just under his head and just support him whilst I let him know what he's going to face. But no, apparently, again, that isn't appropriate in a court of law. I'm just throwing it out there. I think it should be. Now, in the court, District Attorney Stefan said the defendant ambushed the victim and repeatedly shot him to death in a most cowardly and cruel manner. The victim, Mario Fierro, was a beloved teacher at Cathedral Catholic High School, and his death left his school, family, fiancé, and community grieving. We have to remember that about Mario. He was a really loved human being. He was also somebody who had widespread connections because he was a teacher. So every child who knew him was really adversely affected, some of them traumatized by what played out and happened to their teacher. Now, when it came to the sentencing that eventually happened in February 2025, because of all those delays I was talking about, Amy was really brave. She came in and gave a really emotional victim impact statement, and she was very clear. She was very clear in the anger that she felt towards Alvarez, and people who were present said it was just literally palpable. She said, Mario Fierro was my beloved fiancé, who was maliciously murdered by Jesse Alvarez. She said, one moment, Mario and I were planning our wedding. The next moment, our loved ones were planning his funeral. Throughout this agonizing journey, I have learnt that the primary loss is the person, but the secondary losses continue. That murderer's actions endangered many lives. When he took Mario's life, he also took away my security, my safety, my confidence, my life direction, my community, and job stability. My loss is significant and multi-layered. I haven't felt safe since that convict attempted to break into my apartment in 2019. He made it his full-time job to stalk me and eventually Mario. He harassed me to the point of exhaustion. This abnormal behavior infiltrated my life in so many ways. That murderer had time to change his mind, and yet he chose to execute Mario. He is fully responsible for Mario's death. If Alvarez is ever released or tries to contact me, I will continue to fear for my life and the safety of those of my loved ones, because he continues to show a lack of remorse. Despite committing a first-degree murder while lying in wait, I believe life imprisonment without parole is justified based on his actions.
Mario Fierro was my beloved fiance who was maliciously murdered by Jesse Alvarez. One moment, Mario and I were planning our wedding. Then the next moment, our loved ones were planning his funeral. None of our loved ones expected this to happen, nor do we want to be at this sentencing today. I haven't felt safe since that convict attempted to break into my apartment in 2019. I believe life imprisonment without parole is justified based on his actions. And I leave that to God and the judge.
She also said that she stands for women who've had to experience domestic violence and who've also had to deal with men who cannot take no for an answer. But very powerful, and I love the fact that she refers to him as a murderer and a convict. She doesn't name him, she doesn't personalise him. She's saying, you are no longer in my frame of reference as a human being. You will be known by these titles, the convict, the murderer that you are. And that's really important because, of course, she's personalising her experience and relationship with Mario, and she's creating that disparity between the individual perpetrator and the victim, and she does that very, very effectively. Now, there were a lot of further impact statements read out, and this was including from Mario's sister. At that point, whilst these are being read out, and these are very emotive, these are very sad, Alvarez lay with his head on the table, seemingly asleep. I kid you not. Again, this is a court of law. It's not acceptable for a security guard to come up and, I don't know, just grab him by his hair and smash it down onto the table just to make sure that he's, I don't know, awake, because it's important for the person to be listening to these victim impact statements. And it is baffling to me that this man was allowed to show this level of disrespect in the courtroom. At the end of the day, somebody should have physically made him sit up. And again, I appreciate there is this thing called human rights. Well, I'm sorry, he's defied his and he's denied somebody else's. So I would quite happily have him literally grabbed by his shoulders or indeed his head and forcibly made to look in the direction of those victims and to listen to their words. Now, when it came down to the sentencing, it obviously didn't work well in his favour, shall we say, that he was acting in this way. And he was indeed sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Now, his defence actually argued it would be unusual and unconstitutional for someone who suffers so severely from autism spectrum disorder to be given this sentence. I mean, of course, that's how it works, you know. Sorry, what have you done? Well, I have killed somebody in cold blood. I premeditated it. I also stalked the person that I used to be in a relationship with and made their life hell. Well, that sounds altogether horrible. Yes, it does, but it's not really my fault. Well, I think what we've just discussed there is that you premeditated a murder and went through with it, and you were also somebody lying in wait whilst you carried out that murder, and also you, prior to this, had a very troubling history of stalking. So I do think it suggests you are actually guilty of some very serious offences. Yes, you might think that, but what I need to tell you is I have autism. Oh, well, why didn't you tell me that first of all? We won't even bother with the court case. You're free to go. I mean, genuinely, in no world does the world operate this way. And the idea that somebody who has autistic spectrum disorder should not face the full weight of the law when they carry out a cold-blooded execution is ludicrous. And whoever the defence are really don't understand autism, because this is not how autistic people act. And it's a great insult to anybody who has this particular spectrum disorder. Now, after this sentencing took place, and Alvarez's defence were basically saying it wasn't fair, it wasn't constitutionally correct to put him in prison for the rest of his life, the media went and interviewed a guy called Philip Dubé, who's a public defender, and he said no. He said, with respect, even though I'm a defence lawyer, I do believe the jury got this verdict right. He said, in fact, if you just think about other states, this crime would have carried the death penalty because it is so seriousness, the nature of the murder, the fact that it's calculated, the fact he lay in wait for the victim prior prior to killing him. He also went on to say that it was an absolute slap in the face to people on the autism spectrum to suggest that merely because you may be autistic or suffer from some kind of neurodiverse setback in life, that it would render you a homicidal maniac, that it's an affront to people who really want honest and fair treatment in dealing with their setback. Now, I have done thousands of television interviews in my media career. They're very fast paced, they're often live, you don't have a lot of time to sense check what you're saying, you're just reacting, and therefore you don't always pick the perfect phrases to use. And I believe that on reflection, this lawyer would actually wish that they hadn't used the word setback to describe somebody who's neurodiverse. I do appreciate that neurodiversity can have some obstacles because the world is designed for neurotypical, much as the world is designed for right-handed individuals. So of course, there can be more obstacles in your path when you are neurodiverse, but that doesn't mean you are set back, because you also tend to have what I would consider is a set of superpowers a lot of the time that neurotypical individuals don't have. And therefore, whilst your experience is different, it doesn't limit you. And I think it's really powerfully important the language that we use to describe neurodiversity is positive, because neurodiverse people excel in a range of areas and actually excel more positively in those areas, often because of those neurodiverse superpowers. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, because I know that a lot of you will have these issues. And even though I wholeheartedly agree with this lawyer, I just think that that was a bad choice of words. And I agree. Too often people are leaning on poor mental health or other conditions to justify and explain the behaviour when they've committed murder, which is incorrect and wrong. And in fact, I would argue in the vast majority of these cases, it's absolutely irrelevant to the horrible thing that they've done. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that there aren't cases where mental health and decline doesn't contribute. It does. I'm saying, though, that for the most part, these days, mental health is being used as an excuse to try to get more lenient sentences, and the defence use that constantly. And it's appalling, because what actually plays out is they will say, previously undiagnosed. So essentially, how convenient. Oh, the thing we're going to get this person off with, in our opinion, is that they have this issue that nobody else diagnosed until they killed somebody. And then conveniently it appears that it turns out nobody understood that they were really this person with this whole heap of issues, and that's why they acted that way. It just really frustrates me. Now, those who knew Mario, like I said, have spoken about him being this incredible human being. Amy described her fiance as loyal, genuine, hilarious, and unapologetically a coach, teacher, son, brother, friend, and fiance. She said that he lived life to the fullest and was all in. She said Mario's confidence and faith were contagious, that he could light up a room with his energetic spirit. She said he was loved by his students and other staff at the school where he worked. And a friend who went to high school with Mario said he was just so kind-hearted. Everybody loved him. He was not one to draw in drama or chaos or anything like that. Another colleague said there was never a hesitation. I mean, he was just a guy that'd give you the shirt off his back. He cares, truly cares about everybody he comes into contact with. This is what the head football coach said, Sean Doyle, who Fierro served as an assistant coach to. He said he enjoys life, he enjoys what he does, and he enjoys it to the fullest. He does not do anything halfway. Mario just sounds like that all-in great guy. It's as simple as that. When I hear those comments, Mario is just somebody that everybody would want as a friend. Now, Judge Daniel Goldstein, he said, Mario appeared to be a really nice guy and the last person you would think would get murdered. And actually, there has become the Mario Fierro Memorial Scholarship Fund, and that's been set up in his honour. So hopefully his legacy will continue. And whilst the story behind what happened to him is tragic, the impact that he's had on this world, both in his life and now in his death, is quite the contrary. The fact that Jesse Alvarez believed that he had a right to steal Mario's life simply because he couldn't contain his own jealousy, that could send him down a path of irreversible violence, is devastating. Alvarez was absolutely 100% fixated on Amy. It was completely unacceptable for him that she ended the relationship, that she dared to move on, that she dared to become engaged to another man, and that inability to let go became his obsession. And an obsession is so dangerous. It overtakes any sense of reason. And instead of simply respecting her choice and dealing with his own pain, he allowed that jealousy to fester, to grow, to evolve into something just absolutely toxic and uncontrollable and murderous in nature. It is unbelievable that as Amy moved on with a life she deserved, Alvarez just stuck himself in the past, stewing and festering in bitterness, stewing and festering in that delusional world where Mario became a representation of everything that he could not have and potentially everything that he wanted to be. Because Mario is 100 of Alvarez, 1,000,000 of Alvarez. And the truth is that if anything, this case once again examples why stalking should be taken so seriously. Because stalkers genuinely are willing to destroy another life to satisfy their own delusions. It happens all the time. But in this case, whilst Alvarez has absolutely destroyed his own life, his own future, he's also destroyed the lives of everyone who loved Mario. He's irreparably shattered the peace that all of those individuals deserve to know. And I hope that he finds no peace. I hope he serves every day resenting his incarcerating. I hope that festers within. I hope the lack of control over every single thing he does these days destroys him. Because in that way, Mario is powerful. In that way, Mario is the one locking the door every single night as his cell closes. And that means that whilst Mario is not present in this universe, in this paradigm, certainly psychologically, he will be powerful, all powerful over Alvarez's journey until he takes his last breath, still incarcerated in prison. I wish men like this no peace. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I know that a lot of you have been through stalking situations. I know how unsatisfactory the legal system can be around these issues and how it fails to take them seriously. And if any of you are experiencing these kind of concerns, you need to fight to get the help that you deserve. Because like I said, I've told these stories before, and really sadly, I have no doubt whatsoever I'll end up telling these stories again. Take care, look after yourselves, see you next time, be safe.